Thank you so much for joining us here today. And we'll keep it short. We won't do a full hour this time since it's just yourself. But I would like to start with an opening statement from you about why you're running for this position and why we should support you.
Absolutely. So obviously, my name's Brandon Bee. I am one of three brothers who are actually have served the public in many different facets throughout our lives. My older brother was Sacramento Police Officer Bill Bean Jr., who was tragically killed in 1999. And it really made me question what I was doing to help mankind. What can I do to help protect our citizens? And so in 1999, I went into the academy. And at the time, my wife and I, we've been married 27 years. Her name's Billy. So it's kind of ironic and weird, but she really questioned me, and I had to make sure that that was actually the calling where God wanted me to go. So went into the academy. I graduated #1 in just about everything you can and got a job with the Roseville Police Department back in 2000. And during going to the academy, we had our second son, and it was a tremendous amount of work, but I really enjoyed the work. So went to Roseville Police Department in 2000 and worked for them for 14 years. And in those 14 years, I did just about everything you could do in patrol detectives. I was in narcotics, undercover narcotics for 5 years with the Placer County Special Investigations Unit, and really admired the teamwork that we all pitched in to make a difference in the drug world of trying to keep drugs outside of our county. So as I was working at Roseville, I started noticing somewhat of a decline in the leadership, and the morale at the agency took a sharp downward turn. And I thought, you know what? I want to be led. I want to be able to work where I feel value. So I made the jump in 2013 to go to the Placer County Sheriff's Office and worked for Sheriff Ed Bonner, who I absolutely love, great leader. And for the years that I was working underneath him, I really enjoyed my job. I was a patrol deputy, a correctional deputy. I was a crimes against persons detective. I was a member of the special enforcement team. You name it, I wanted to do it. And so I've done everything but school resource officer and K-9. And I was blessed enough to get a promotion and have worked as a supervisor in corrections, on patrol, in our courthouses. And now I'm currently assigned as the administrative sergeant in our agency. When Sheriff Bonner left, it created somewhat of a vacuum in the leadership, and morale started to once again decline. And I couldn't understand how Placer County, with the legacy that we have in surrounding areas, could have this happen to us. So I was a little dismayed, and I'm thinking to myself, well, I came to Placer County to be led, and now I'm facing the same thing that I was facing before, a lack of morale. I mean, our deputies, unfortunately, used to go out and work very hard because they didn't want to disappoint the sheriff. Now they're afraid of doing their job for fact of being either retaliated against for doing something that's unpopular but still right, or just the feeling that the administration doesn't care enough about them to have their back even when they do something right and it's brought before the public eye. So really, that's kind of the main thing that I'm running for, and that's how come I got over 72% of the Deputy Sheriff's Association to endorse me over my opponent. And my opponent and I both work for the same people. And his big claim is that experience matters. Well, we have seen the last 5.5 years of where that experience has led us. And that is why the Deputy Sheriff's Association has endorsed me. But it goes beyond that, I think. We've gotten so politicized in law enforcement that now it lacks what it should, which is the strength to stand alone without political pressure. The Constitution is what the sheriff bows to. The U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and that is our barometer for everything we do. So going out doing this grassroots style. I have to knock on doors. I don't have political money. What I do have is just about every single law enforcement and fire agency in our county, aside with Nevada County Sheriff's Office. We just received the endorsement for the Sacramento Deputy Sheriff's Association, and we're working on the El Dorado Deputy Sheriff's Association. We have Sierra County Deputy Sheriff's Association. And the big thing is really, this isn't about me. This is not an ego boost for Brandon Bean to be the top law enforcement officer in the county of Placer. This is for the men and women who do the job every single day. They're the ones who we should be gearing how our policies read to make the job easier for these people to go out and combat crime and take bad people to jail and off the streets. And right now it's backwards. It feels like we're all working for the sheriff and the undersheriff, when it should be flipped around and upside down, where the sheriff and undersheriff work for the men and women who do the job, and therefore they're working for their community. Because when you have bad morale, you have people who don't want to do the job. When you have good morale, you have people who want to go out there, be engaged with their community, and be able to enforce the laws as they're written, as opposed to watching the winds of favor decide their fate. And I'm blessed to know that I have the support of these people, the support of my family. And it was very, very important for me to get the support of the people, the men and women who do this job. So
if you could, for those of us who are not in Placer County, give us a sense in terms of what did your opponent do to sort of lose the support of the rank and file? If you could be as explicit, as specific as you possibly could be, it'd be really helpful for us to know what caused, I don't know, would you call it a rift, a disagreement, and what do you think you were able to do to convince them that you were a better choice than he was?
See, I think that's the funny part, is I didn't have to convince anybody. I was the one who was getting the phone calls when Sheriff Bell announced his retirement. And there wasn't a lot of convincing they had to do to get me to say, okay. But obviously, being that going through an election is such a difficult process, obviously it took me several days of talking it over with the family, doing some very hard praying about it, to come to the conclusion that, yes, I wanted to do that and put myself out there. But the rift, it's between our administration and the line level. And really because we went to this hierarchical model where any idea that anybody has to go through this very rigorous chain of command, that at any point during that chain of command, an idea that has value could be quashed without anybody hearing it. Because my opponent is, for lack of a better term, he's not very forgiving. So if you make a mistake or you do something that is not popular to him, your career ends right there. You're done. And unfortunately, a lot of people feel that he should have more grace, allow us to be able to talk to each other inside our four walls like human beings. So if I came up to you and I said, Marcus, I have this idea, and you're my boss, you can say, okay, let me hear it real quick. And then if you hear the idea, you don't like it, you can just say, that's not going to work. And this is the reason why. And we don't have that relationship anymore. We haven't seen the undersheriff in probably 5.5 years. He's made one briefing in that time, and people are just kind of going, where is he? Why isn't he working for us? And it makes it very difficult when you're trying to inspire people to come to work here, especially in our corrections division where we're suffering. I need to, when I'm elected, I need to be in the trenches with those people, listening to what the problems truly are and how we can better hire the caliber of people we need in our jails and on our streets to work for us from these people. Unfortunately, recruiting, as much as people want to say, oh, you have to have a good advertisement, you have to have a good poster, it's all about word of mouth. So if somebody comes to our agency from a different agency and they do what's called a ride along with one of our deputies, and they say, hey, tell us the truth, what's going on here? And they say, hey, you don't want to work here. It's the grass isn't greener over here. They don't come over here. And we lose our prospective recruitment through that. So it has to be based on caring about the people who are actually doing the job. And that's where we're divided. We don't feel that we have value. We've been billed as a number and not as human beings anymore. So if you work 25 years and you feel like, my gosh, I can be replaced any second, and everything I've done in the last 25 years has no value to these people, well, then I can do it for $2 more somewhere else. And then you start losing good people who have been legacy employees, and you lose all the knowledge and experience that they've gained and given to your agency. So that's probably why we have the biggest rift right now.
I should have also said, forgive my manners, before I even asked the question, that I'm very sorry for your loss.
Oh, thank you.
I remember that case. I have been here for 32 years at this point, so I remember that case. So forgive me for not saying that sooner.
No, thank you for remembering. I think that's probably the most.
I remember. I remember that case very well. So to not to put a finer point on. So is it a case of a lack of confidence among the frontline troops in the other person? Is it that simple, or is it more complex than that?
I mean, it is that simple, but it is more complex. I mean, my opponent came into the deputy sheriff's interview for endorsement for the Deputy Sheriff's Association and basically told us that up until 2 weeks before then, he really didn't want the job. Him and his family were going to move to Arizona. They had already been looking at property, and he was going to be retiring. And then 2 weeks ago, he felt the fire and said he still had more in the tank. So he was asked, how long do you expect to be our sheriff? And he goes, well, if I get the engines running on all cylinders, probably 2.5 years. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's a 4-year term. How is that going to happen? And basically what he said is he has to build the bridges with our board of supervisors for that to happen. So in the last 42 years, this is the first election that people actually get to vote for 2 people. And what has happened in the past is a sheriff gets reelected. They do 2.5 years. If they're on good terms with the board of supervisors, they are the ones who choose their sheriff. They give the torch to that person. That person's now the interim sheriff for 2 years and gets to run as an incumbent. And as an incumbent, I think we all realize it's a very difficult thing to overcome if you're running from the outside.
So, I mean, one of the things that's, I think, difficult so law enforcement agencies are paramilitary by nature. And so one of the things that as an editorial board, we have to try to figure out here is how much of the sort of internal strife within the department is of public interest, and which candidate would serve the public interest the best. Sure. And so, given the scenario that you've laid out in terms of the internal dynamics within the department, what would you say to the public who may not be as interested in the internal dynamics but are interested in public safety? I mean, sure. What argument would you make to the public, to the broader public, in terms of why you would be a better choice than your opponent?
Well, you look at where we are with recruitment in society for law enforcement. We don't have a lot of people who want to do the job as a deputy sheriff. They just don't. They feel like it's too much of a risk because you could be out there doing your job, make a wrong choice, and now you're in prison for the rest of your life. You've lost your house and everything else. So retaining our employees is probably one of the biggest things that we have to do. Otherwise, we lose the public safety that has made Placer County the best county to live in my opinion. And right now, I feel like my opponent is doing a better job of driving people away from our organization than they are at keeping people at our organization. So just if I had to tell somebody in the public why they should vote for me, It's because I have those relationships with the men and women who do the job. They understand that I stand for them and that I support them. Obviously, I'll hold them accountable if they do anything that is illegal, immoral, or unethical. But at the same time, I'm also one of them. I spend my Christmases coming in to help them and work for them. And that's huge. That's leadership. That's leading by example. And we don't have that anymore. We have people who tell us they are super busy in the administration, yet I'm always there before them, and I leave well after they've already gone home. So it paints a very different picture on what they're saying they're doing and what they're actually doing, where people should know that a leader shows you what they're going to do. And I think it's just so imperative to keep our county as safe as possible. We need to have somebody who's there leading the troops, making them feel valued, because with bad morale comes bad decisions. And it's one bad decision that could tip a whole agency.
So you're saying there's bad morale right now?
Yes, I am.
And how does that play out on a day-to-day basis?
It's just, if you had to sit there and get into a patrol car and realize that if you go out there, you make a traffic stop, it turns ugly in any way, shape, or form, even though you're doing the right thing, you don't feel supported by your administration, you're taking a risk. But you get paid the same if you take your car, you drive out of the station, you drive a mile down the road, and you park underneath an oak tree. So what happens is people don't want to do their job. And you need leadership to make them feel valued, so they understand that you are there to support them, and that you actually want them to go out and work and keep the public safe. And that's the morale issue we're having right now. It's easier for people to drive out of there and park than it is for them to say, I want to be a part of this community. I want to engage the community. I want to keep the community safe.
So you're saying that the department isn't running anywhere close to peak efficiency right now because of morale?
Yes, I would definitely say that.
So when you get into office, if you win, what's the first thing you're going to do?
First thing I'm going to do is, obviously, I'm going to get all the administrators together, because they're the only working class that's supporting my opponent is the Law Enforcement Management Association, which is made up of the lieutenants and the captains, and have a meeting to tell them that our focus is now changing. It's going to be on the men and women who do the job. And then I'm going to hopefully unshackle a lot of them to allow them to actually be the leaders that they were promoted to be. Right now, I feel like possibly they're only answering to one person, and that's my opponent. And so any decision they want to make, they have to run through my opponent before they do it. And then on my first day off, I'm going to go to the jail and I'm going to work somebody's shift for them, because right now, on average, we hold 6 people over per shift mandatorily, so that we can continue to function in the jail itself. And I don't think that's fair to them. And a leader's going to go down there and show them that, hey, I'm willing to get into the trenches with you. I don't care if I'm the sheriff of the county, somebody needs to do something. And that's just a boost of morale right there. When people see that you're willing to sacrifice your day off, when you now are somebody important, it goes miles. So that would be the first thing I'd want to do. And then I'd start talking to the troops. Where do we need to make the improvement to get back to the peak efficiency that the public expects out of Placer County Sheriff's Office?
Sergeants are critically important in all departments. They're the generals on the ground, the linchpin. But there is a big difference between being a sergeant and sitting in that office. It's a completely different skill set, completely different demands. What would you say to the public to say that you're ready to make that gigantic leap from sergeant to the sheriff?
Because I have the smartest people in Placer County working for us right now, bless you. And they're the ones who are absolutely critical to the success of the agency. When people went out on COVID, our sheriff, our undersheriff, the whole management staff, they were sequestered to their homes, right? They could work from home, so they stayed home. we still managed to run at peak efficiency without them being there. And that's because the men and women of our organization are consummate professionals. This position that I am going to be elected to is the top leadership position of our organization and for the county. And I can prove time and time again that I'm a better leader than my opponent.
So, Sergeant, and I'm sorry, Robin, I don't want to monopolize that. So let me take the first kind of tricky question. So there's the thing that editorial boards have to do is we have to, like, if you were not running for office, we would not be asking you the question I'm about to ask you. But you are running for office, and so we do need to ask the question because as we're recording these, we're being completely transparent with our readers. We're putting the transcripts, the interviews all out there, and let people speak for themselves in their own words. There's no filter here. It's going to go from your words to straight to our readers, exactly as you answer it. So you are currently involved in a lawsuit filed by a sheriff, a female sheriff, which you were accused of sexually charged language against her while processing paperwork related to an on-the-job injury that she experienced. She has also accused you of sexual harassment, alleging that you said that you're going to rape her, and other comments that I can't repeat in a family newspaper. And the sergeant who's making this accusation is alleging that this happened at least once a week. Can you, for our readers, can you please respond to these allegations?
Sure. So I'm aware of Miss Yaw's allegations. She was an employee who was unfortunately arrested and then fired from our organization and did not bring up any of these claims while she was employed at our agency. The only time these claims came to light was when she decided she was going to sue our organization. Now, although there is information out there, I've been told by the people who actually probably put the information out there that I am forbidden to talk about it since it's ongoing litigation. Now, I have been told, and I found out in your newspaper, that hopefully we're going to be going to court here in May. I'm really hoping that happens so that your readers and the public understands that what's being put out there is completely out of context. And I'm hoping for the chance to prove that in a court of law so that I can be transparent with you and the readers. I want to tell you everything, but I've been ordered not to.
But you, I would imagine that you would not be precluded from saying that you deny the allegations, or you can say that.
I can say that I deny a lot of that allegation. Yes.
A lot of doesn't mean all of, though. Can you be more specific?
I think if your readers are as astute as they are and they do their investigation and they pull the papers, they will get the full story. Unfortunately, like I said, I am absolutely forbidden to talk about it because I could potentially get wrapped up in insubordination and, let's face it, possibly lose my job. And I have to obey the law just as I have to ask other people to obey the law. So I'm told that I'm not allowed to talk about it. I can't talk about it. I want to talk about it. And hopefully once the case is over, you guys will have me back, or at least want to sit down and talk to me about it. And I'll be as transparent as you want. And I hope you understand that.
And I hope you understand we had to ask the question.
No, and I appreciate you asking the question.
Yeah. You're seeking the highest law enforcement office in Placer County, and so we have to ask, and then we will air this interview, and we'll have the transcripts, and readers can make up their own minds, particularly those in Placer County.
Sure.
All right, so I've been talking way too much. I will yield to my colleague and friend Robin Epley.
No problem, Marcos. Thank you. There is another question I also would like to ask you, and it's not an easy one. You've been endorsed by former Arizona Sheriff Richard Mack, an endorsement that you proudly display on your campaign website. Mm-hmm. Mack was a longtime board member of the far-right militia group, the Oath Keepers. He's also the founder of the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, and established the County Sheriff Project movement, both of which reaffirm the claim, what they claim is the constitutional power to refuse to enforce federal laws. So I need to ask you, do you support these groups and their extremist ideologies?
Who I support is Sheriff Mack, and I support the Constitution of the United States as being the supreme law that our sheriffs are beholden to. So that, yes, extremist groups, no.
Okay. There has been a rise in extremist ideologies in Placer County. And so as sheriff, would you address that in any way?
Well, I still think that everybody's entitled to their First Amendment right. As long as it's a peaceful gathering of people who are sharing ideas and it doesn't obviously threaten the safety of our public, then I'm going to enforce the First Amendment and make sure they have the right to speak. But that doesn't mean I need to support it. Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely. Does that mean that you would also support extremist ideologies? I used to not support them, obviously, but would you support rallies if they weren't violent on the other side of the spectrum as well? Say if BLM showed up and protested outside the Galleria, or?
Absolutely. As long as people are peacefully gathering to share their ideas and their opinions, then we should honor that. Men and women have died for that right. So who would I be to preclude certain groups from exercising that First Amendment right?
Okay, thank you. I was going to ask you too, what are some of your thoughts on Governor Gavin Newsom's decision to release certain California inmates during the height of the COVID pandemic?
I think knowing my past, I'm very passionate about speaking out against any of that. I think there are just so many people that we have allowed back onto the street that have committed heinous crimes under the disguise of either COVID, prison overpopulation, work credits, you name it, and they're being released and they're causing more harm. And unfortunately, the only time we notice that is when people die. And we're so reactive to things that we could predict. If we could predict it, we can prevent it. And so we know that this experiment to release these prisoners because you think it's going to save them from COVID, I think we could have all seen that what comes from that is an increase in violence and an increase in crime. So we need to think about better ways of doing what we're trying to do.
Do you have any suggestions as to what would have been a better way?
I think they should have just kept them there. They're already exposed to the people that are in there. How is releasing them now going to prevent them from getting COVID? I'm sorry, if you don't want COVID, please don't get arrested, because you're going to be put into jail or prison and you're going to be around people a lot. That's my thing. I wish people would understand that we have these criminals who come out under a COVID knee-jerk reaction when we don't even have all the facts yet. So we have to think public safety first, and then we can find a way to work together to find a solution to the problem. Right now, we just do things without coming together on both sides and sitting down and saying, how can we do this safely?
And
So
what
you're-
are
Go ahead.
go ahead, Marcos.
So your endorsements sort of are really heavy on the law enforcement. Law enforcement are uniformly on your side. What about among Placer County Board of Supervisors or other non-law enforcement leaders in the county?
So when I first started, I really looked to the men and women who did the job for their endorsement first. By the time I secured the Deputy Sheriff's Association, which was by far the greatest endorsement next to the Placer Public Employee Organization's endorsement, my opponent already had all of the politicians on his side, and that didn't bother me. I don't think that a politician should be the lead law enforcement officer for the county. I think that sends a mixed message.
Sorry, my button wouldn't work. No, I understand completely. And I think Robin has one more question.
Sure.
I do. So last year there was a Roseville waitress by the name of Vida who was shot and killed in broad daylight at her place of work by her former fiance. And according to the Education Fund to Stop Gun Violence, over half of all intimate partner homicides are committed with guns. And a woman is 5 times more likely to be murdered when her abuser has access to a gun.
Mhm.
So as sheriff, how would you get guns out of the hands of domestic abusers? And what else can be done to curb domestic violence in our community?
So one of the things that we have at our disposal is when we respond to a domestic violence incident, we are able to seize those weapons. And there's actually a form we can fill out and a judge will sign removing the guns from that situation. Unfortunately, when people who have the intent to murder or kill somebody, they'll find whatever they need to accomplish that goal. And it's not necessarily the law-abiding citizen who has a gun and decides one day that they're going to shoot somebody. It usually ends up over a span of time. But to curb domestic violence in general, I think it needs to be education, and it needs to come from when we as law enforcement are presented with these opportunities to talk to the victims who have been abused. It really matters that we show the compassion and care that you have to have for these people so that they understand that there is a place they can go that is safe, that we can find them some ulterior living arrangements for now. We can toughen our laws on domestic violence, especially constant abusers who might only go in under misdemeanors, and track that and have them serve longer sentences for it. But it really comes down to the compassion that we provide the victims at the time we get there. And that's such a huge component. Being a crimes against persons detective, I dealt with a lot of that. And I had to sit down and take the time, because it takes time to really care about somebody. And once they feel like you care about them, then you're not just telling them information, you're guiding them to the right location. And they'll want to respond to that.
So I think your answer naturally brings up the question of ghost guns, of illegal weapons. And I was wondering if there's anything that you would do to seize more illegal weapons off the streets.
Absolutely. Our deputies do a great job of going out there and trying to find guns at every chance we get. The problem is our crimes aren't, the sentences for somebody who has an illegal firearm or stolen firearm, they're not punitive enough to make it to where people don't want to get caught with a gun. They know it's a misdemeanor and they'll probably go to jail, get booked, and be out the next day. And that's a travesty. And we need to tighten those gun laws that are punitive to the people who are using stolen guns, using guns that aren't registered, that are on probation or parole and in possession of these guns, because the law-abiding citizens aren't the ones who are committing the crimes. The law-abiding citizens are filling out their concealed weapons permits. We know where they live. We know their name. We know their history. And that's the difference.